All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Nigeria, and everyone from wherever we are tuning in to this month's edition of Nairametrics Monthly Industry Outlook. And we've done a couple of industries so far this year. We've done agriculture, we've done banking, and a host of them. While this month we are going into the telecommunications sector, and the theme for this month's outlook is beyond connectivity, telcos, and the future of financial inclusion in Nigeria. As we have known that the Nigerian telecommunications industry has recorded remarkable growth in the last 10 years, significantly, and that has also propelled some level of growth also across some other sectors that relies on the telecommunications sector. And so today we're going to be distilling some of the facts that has driven this growth in this strategic industry, and then looking into the future, what to expect. We have a lineup of great panelists today who would also help us to be able to put some perspective into these industries. I'll really go into introduction of our guest, and by just reading their profiles, we'll be able to tell that today's conversation will be quite robust. I'll start from Mr. Ayodele Koka. He's the MD CEO, Open Access Data Center. He's one of the leading players in the development of the data center industry in Africa, and is the chairperson of an influential industry group, the Africa Data Centers Association. Before joining OADC as the CEO, Dr. Koka led Rack Center to becoming a household name in Nigeria and a leading brand in Africa with global recognition and numerous prestigious international awards. Throughout a distinguished international career as a technology and business leader, Dr. Koka has held senior positions in finance, energy management, consulting, and then in the United Kingdom. His achievements have been recognized by numerous awards, including the Distinguished Manufacturing Alumni Award at Cranfield Institute of Technology in 2020. And in the same year, he was recognized as one of the global top 30 edge computing leaders by Data Economy magazine. He holds an MSc from Cranfield Institute of Technology and a PhD from ESCAE University. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Ayodele Koka. Next on my list, we have Mrs. Nkem Oniegboma, FCA, CITN, ACIB. That's quite a lot. Nkem Oniegboma is an inspirational leader with a passion for delivering upward growth and exceptional performance. She holds a bachelor's degree in accounting from Ahmadu Bello University and a master's in banking and finance from the University of Lagos. She's a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, a member of the Institute of Directors of Nigeria, and a certified financial analyst, level 3 candidate. She has attended various leadership, business management, and finance training programs at various prestigious institutions such as Harvard Business School, Wharton Business School, University of Pennsylvania, Said Business School, Oxford University, and London Business School. She has over 31 years of experience in the financial sector. Her leadership expertise extends to her role as MD Zenith Pensions Custodian Limited, CFO, Emerging Markets Telecommunications Services at Nine Mobile, board member of a private foundation, a mentor, and strategic advisor. Thank you very much, Mrs. Nkem, for joining us today. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Chukwebuka Ezewuze. He's a senior manager growth and new business tech platforms, IT MTN. With over 18 years of experience in the technology sector, Ebuka is an accomplished technology leader specializing in driving innovation and delivering cutting-edge solutions. His diverse skill set encompasses business strategy formulation, risk mitigation, product development, and process optimization. In his current role as the senior manager for growth and new business platforms in IT, MTN Nigeria, he led digital transformation programs and evolution of new tech business areas for MTN, cutting across digital services, financial services, advertising, metaverse, blockchain, AI, and a host of others. He's a thought leader and has shared technology insights as a key speaker and panelist in various technology conferences and seminars, including Africa Technology Expo, West Africa CIO Summit, and a host of others. Ebuka has earned an MBA from Obafemi Awolowo University and a bachelor's degree from Abia State University. He's an alumnus of Lagos Business School. He holds technology and business leadership certifications as a DevOps leader certified, NVIDIA AI operations, and a professional agile Scrum Master, reflecting his commitment to continuous learning and industry best practices. Thank you very much, Mr. Chukwibuka, for joining us today for this webinar. It already promises to be an exciting conversation, just looking at the list of expertise that we have to help us with this conversation today. And without wasting much of our time, we'd like to go to a short webinar presentation by Yuade Ahime. He's the head of our strategy at Nairametrics. Yuade, please go ahead.
Thank you, Samuel, and good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me better now. I've had a cup of coffee, so I think my throat is a bit clearer. I'll just be sharing my screen so I could take you through the presentation and share some insights into the telecommunications industry. We're looking at telecommunications beyond connectivity, telecommunications future of financial inclusion. We've seen that over the last 20 years, the advent of the telcos in Nigeria's business space, expanding not just the economy, but also expanding the opportunities for business through the growth of the industry. We've seen subscriber base hit over 220 million, economic contribution to the GDP in 2023 increased dramatically, where coverage has historically been low. And you remember in 2023 with the cash crunch issues, one of the major things that happened was the telcos were able to step in towards ensuring that the expansion of financial inclusion, ability to get access to transactions were much faster and much easier. Key players include the big names, MTN, Glo, Airtel, Nine Mobile. In the ISP space, Extranet, Smile Communication, Tizeti, in terms of infrastructure and data centers, the Jike Rack Center, MDXI, and just a whole lot of players who have ensured that over the last 20 years, they've expanded the opportunities for Nigerians, not just to be able to have access to the internet, but to be able to have access to financial services. And we've seen the rise of mobile data users, especially with more and more Nigerians having smartphones and so on. So we've seen the ability of Nigerians to work on the go, whether it's for financial services or it's for personal services. It's no longer just about talking on the phone or sending a text. It's about creating so much more. And this has happened because of the impact of the telecom solution providers in the industry. What has the last landscape been? We've seen that the NCC, which covers the regulatory aspect of the telco industry, covers ISPs, covers the GSM operators, data services. We've seen emergence of major players through the liberalization of the industry. Key players like MTN, like mentioned earlier on, ISPs and cloud service providers significantly contributing to the GDP. I remember I think it was 2010 or 2011 when the telco industry was brought into the computation for the GDP. We saw Nigeria accelerate to become the largest economy in Africa. What are the reforms that have happened under this administration? A number of them have come up towards enhancing competition, expanding mobile services, but also not only mobile services, but also expanding ISP coverage and data management. We saw the signing in of the Data Act in 2023 too. Looking at areas that don't have the adequate amount of coverage, we know now that I think it's about between 45 and 55% of internet coverage across Nigeria, and they're looking at pushing that to 90%, which is the goal by 2027. We've seen more efficient usage of the spectrum through broader internet service delivery across mobile, broadband operators, enhancing service quality and expansion efforts. What are the regulatory adjustments and role of telcos in financial inclusion? Through all the issues that have happened over the last 2 years, especially with the cash crunch, we saw the reduction of regulatory bottlenecks when this administration came in towards allowing telco companies to participate more, and we've seen more and more of them going into the financial services space through PBSs, others through alliances with fintech companies and so on. Financial inclusion initiative strategy, which was also to reduce financial exclusion, and telcos have played a major role in integrating mobile money services, especially in rural areas where traditional bankings have been limited. Mobile money transactions by 2023, we know what the cash crunch did. It exceeded 30 trillion, and we expect that by the end of this year, we might be hitting the hundreds of trillions in terms of mobile money transactions. Partnerships with banks and fintechs have also expanded that, with 50 million Nigerians using mobile lines. We can see that those services have extended, and we can see that in the transaction volumes and values that have gone on in the last 2 years. Government-backed programs such as the SANEF initiative, Shared Agent Network, towards establishing 500,000 mobile agents by 2025 to deepen financial inclusion in unserved areas. Innovation and opportunities for growth, and we've seen that with the launch of the 5G technology in 2020, offers faster and more reliable internet service. How quickly are we going to spread that? Because I know Nigeria is still heavily within the range of 2G, 3G, even the 4G integration. That's why, but with 5G coming and the opportunities that it creates in terms of speed, in terms of reliability, it would not just affect the financial services area, but it will affect the financial services provision from different perspectives, in terms of fintechs, health techs, edutechs, you just name it, e-commerce, and so on and so forth. The Internet of Things also leveraging the IoT to introduce innovative solutions in areas such as energy, agriculture, healthcare, bad platforms like the Smart Agriculture Savings Program, which have already seen some level of success. AI and automation, with the introduction of AI, the ease and flexibility of carrying out services much faster, improving on cyber security, fraud detection and data management, and so on. Rising demand, 200 million plus. So you know, and a lot of them, 65 to 70% of them are young people who are moving on the go, who just want to do their businesses as they are going on. They're thinking on the go as they're walking towards their offices or inside their transportation hubs. They just want services that are fast and reliable. And there are huge potentials for future revenue streams through AI, through 5G, through IoTs. And these are huge opportunities towards diversifying the current revenue streams that we see. And a lot of that will play into the financial services. Why? Because when you integrate all these services, what then happens is that more people are included, more people do financial transactions, more revenues are generated, not just for the financial services providers, but also the telcos. We've seen what the collaboration between the traditional banks and telcos in terms of just sending SMS texts when it came out, in terms of transactions being done and so on, how huge that impacted financial inclusion. Are there challenges? Of course there are. Regulatory hurdles, we still need to get out and continue to improve on our regulatory framework in terms of taxation, in terms of foreign exchange, in terms of how we get permits towards infrastructure development, even locally, how we create infrastructure development and build them through right of ways like permits and agreements, the cost of doing that. foreign exchange volatility we've seen in the last 2 years with the regulation of the foreign exchange markets, the yo-yo of the naira against the dollar has impacted hugely in terms of investment in infrastructure, which had continually reduced over time. And this you can relate this back to the regulatory hurdles. Are you creating the right regulatory framework so that telcos can have access to bring in infrastructure and continue to expand the spectrum? Operational costs, we've seen that inflation, despite the tapered down um, over the last 2 months, but at 2% is still high in terms of how operational costs affect businesses. The subsidy removal has also increased the level of, of operational cost, energy cost, bridging that energy divide of are you on the grid, or are you going to invest in infrastructure to improve your energy towards providing 24-hour services, and huge implications to operational costs. But are there opportunities? Of course there are. Growth with the rising demand and more young people coming into the workforce environment. In terms of voice and data, people will still call, but data offering has expanded and grown and expanded the opportunities and possibilities for Nigeria. The deployment of 5G along with Internet of Things and AI innovation present telcos with opportunities to enhance their services and tap into new revenue streams, like we said earlier, especially in underserved areas. In conclusion, we see a pathway journey though filled with potential weeds and thorns along the side, but laden with promises and opportunities that could explode the economic potential and growth of a country that has the population. The hope for telecommunication industry lies in the fact that there are blue skies ahead on this journey to exploration. Thank you very much. And back to you, Samuel.
All right, thank you very much, Rade, for that very insightful presentation. And I think you've been, it has been very helpful in setting the context for today's conversations. Again, welcome to our audience. You can introduce yourself in the chat section. That is an opportunity to also relate with any other people who are also interested in this kind of conversation. Meanwhile, if you have friends who you think will find this kind of conversation impactful and insightful, you can also send it to them to join. When you have questions during the panel session, you can go to the Q&A box and type your questions there. We'll be able to pick some of them. And then for some of them, our panelists to also try and do justice to them. And the first session here, we'll be talking about telecommunications, state of play, and beyond connectivity. And I would really be starting with the lady in the house, Mrs. Inkem. One of the things that you already said during his presentation was that the Nigerian telecommunications sector has grown significantly in the last couple of years. So if you do like a comparison in the last 10 years, contribution of telcos has moved from about 11. Apologies for that interruption. It is only fair that we're talking about connectivity and that happened. I'm very, very sorry about that. But like I said, I'll come to you, Mrs. Kim. We're talking about for about 17% of the Nigerian. Now, from your perspective, growth in that sector of the Nigerian economy, especially given that no other sector has witnessed such an outsized growth in the last decade. Mrs. Kim, I want to confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, I can, but there's a bit of breakage. So I'm waiting for you to land, then I can hear you properly.
Okay. Yeah. The question was, what are the key factors that has driven this significant in the last decade, considering that other sectors, no other sectors has really recorded such outsized growth in the last 10 years?
Thank you, Samuel, and good morning, everyone. You could see in the course of the presentation, your intro, the obvious reason for the growth in this sector are not far-fetched. One is the increase, the ever-growing population of Nigeria. You know, as we are seated, we are well over 230 million in terms of population size. And that in itself has helped to increase the market share for the telecom sector. And suffice to say that where people exist in history, people must talk, people must connect, people must interact and collaborate, they need information and data to take informed decisions. So the market is there, and so the sector is very viable. If you ask me, that's one. And the second reason why, the growth, the significant growth, is the increase. There's a surge in demand for data and digital services, especially amongst the youth. We know that the population is made up of youthful. The demographics shows that the youth are all in for it. I mean, in terms of the use of the devices, like a situation where they use it for on social media or e-commerce and other businesses too. So the demand for data and digital services has helped to boost that economy. And thirdly, if you ask me, has to do with the investment in the infrastructure. Both local and international investors have actually found that sector like a sector, I mean, the digital sector, the telecom sector, as a sector that is an enabler, will spur the growth of other sectors. So there have been a lot of investment coming in. These investments are tailored towards improving or providing the communication tools. So places where the telco companies are now investing in digital centers, having to lay undersea cables. Investment in fiber optics has helped to improve the quality of the network, the speed and the reliability. So that in itself has made the sector very attractive, like I said, for foreign investors to come in. I think as at Q1 this year, 2024, the total of foreign direct investment has come into the sector, has far exceeded about $191 million has come in by way of foreign direct investment, which surpassed the whole of what came in 2023. What came in 2023 in FDI was $134 million. So you could see that in itself is very, very encouraging. And the last but not the least, we ask me, is the regulatory support from, the government of the day has been very supportive in terms of the way it is monitoring the regulation, the operations in the telecom space, especially encouraging competition and innovation, and the consumers are all in it for better services. So you could see that, there is a sector that, like I said, is an enabler. So it cannot but grow. Those are the key growth factors. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Inkim. And I was still going to stick with you here. And I like the fact that you spoken about how much it has grown and some of the factors that has contributed to that. I like the fact that you also quoted the strong direct investment figure that has come into the sector. But do you think there is more room for growth, considering that right now it's the second largest sector in the Nigerian economy, slightly behind agriculture? Are there perhaps room for maybe surpassing agriculture, for example? And then if there's more room for growth, what are the factors that are going to drive this?
Okay. Yes, my answer will be a resounding yes. There's room for growth in the telecom space, given that, we still have over 26% of the Nigerian population that are underserved, that are financially excluded from the system. So the use of the mobile money app will help, in that direction, making sure that the rural people, there is a total coverage. That's one. Then another sector is that in the area of e-commerce and the digital economy, I think is a veritable area, is a vast opportunity for the telecom space, telecom business to strive. Why? Because people need good internet. People need data, and this data can be processed as a very fast speed. So, and now we're talking about telemedicine, we're talking about e-learning, we're talking about, so many things. People are going to school. They don't, or going to hospital. They don't necessarily have to go to the hospital in person. They could be attended to online. The COVID has taught us that several things can be done without, physically going to, either a brick and mortar office or center to be attended to. So that is another very, because of the growth in e-commerce. And another thing again, we can see again, the Nigerian digital economy is at its infancy stage, if I say it's at its early stage. So other sectors like agri, in the course of the presentation, the introduction, the young man actually said so. So agri, healthcare, education, other sector we benefit immensely, not only in the financial sector, that will benefit from this growth. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Nkem. And I'm very fairly said there. The ICT sector, the telecommunications sector has really have been instrumental, e-commerce, education, healthcare, finance, and so on and so forth. So yeah, and it will be interesting to see how this goes in the next 5 to 10 years. I'll come to you now, Mr. Ebuka. As a player in this sector, really, how have large service providers like you and some others too, have they been able to evolve over this period, especially given the perspective of financial inclusion and payment systems that we've been seeing going around in recent years? Mr. Ebuka.
All right, thank you, Samuel. So pretty much the Nigerian telecom service providers, MTN and a whole lot of others, have really undergone significant evolution, particularly in financial inclusion and digital payments. You see, with the advent of the license regime, the CBN releasing the license for the payment service bank license, which was made available to telcos to be able to play in the space and contribute to financial inclusion. That actually opened up a host of opportunities for many players, many telco players in Nigeria. And that has really contributed a lot to helping the economy actually grow. Now, these things are actually achieved by telecommunications utilizing the unique capabilities that service providers have, right? One is the vast network coverage, all right? Another is a large customer base, and as well as technological advancements. One of the key things as well that telcos have actually done to contribute to this growth is also the rollout of the wide connectivity coverage across Nigeria. So over the years, there's been a gradual rollout of various technologies of connectivities from 2G to 3G and finally 4G and then finally 5G. And every single payment transaction that happens in the country, right, runs on this infrastructure. That has been one of the critical infrastructures that has been put in place by the telcos in enabling the growth of this sector. And that's one of the ways that the telcos have actually evolved in enabling financial services and payments. So another is also the expansion into financial services. With the advent of the payment service banks, we've actually seen the likes of MTN, Glo, Nine Mobile, actually picking up the licenses and then spinning up entities that are actually licensed by CBN and are providing financial services to consumers and also to businesses as well. That's part of the evolution. And we've seen quite a large uptake in this area. We've seen various telcos providing services, financial services like payments, transfers, P2P transfers, bill payments, remittance, and a host of others. Additionally, also is the agency banking. So before the payment service bank license was issued, there was also another license that was made available to telcos and a host of other providers. What that is a super agent license. What it basically means that it actually enabled telcos to utilize the vast distribution network to provide agency services for financial institutions, meaning that people in rural areas and various other areas can actually access financial services, especially in areas whereby there are no banks and there are no coverage of strong financial presence from banks. That has also enabled the spread of financial services down to the grassroots level. As well as another thing that is also very, very impactful in the economy that has also been done by telcos, which really has not been so much publicized, is the aspect of device financing. So consistently, the smartphone penetration in Nigeria has consistently been growing. And that has been driven by various factors. One of the key factors is the availability of connectivity. Secondly, is also the availability of services that are leveraged, that are deployed over connectivity services, like digital services. Thirdly, also, is the affordability of the devices, right? So we've seen quite a lot of telcos like MTN and a host of others going into that sort of business model, providing device financing model for consumers. What it basically means is that to afford it, to buy a smartphone without having the sufficient funding at that point in time as a person, you can actually acquire a smartphone and then pay over time through telco and partnerships. Then also the customer education as well. So one of the key things that, it's one thing to evolve into financial services and provide those financial services. It's also another thing for the consumers to actually be aware of these services and also be aware of and also be informed of how to utilize them as well. So in partnering with various regulatory bodies like the CBN, the NCCs, the banks, and various other partners, lots of customer education have been going out on the radios, on the TVs, creating awareness of this sort of services, basically aimed at enabling people, both the underserved people and the financially excluded people, to actually be able to welcome to the financial network of Nigeria and start to enjoy the benefits that come from digital payments and electronic payments. So these are some of the key ways by which the telcos have actually, and large service providers have actually evolved within a very, very short period within the perspective of financial inclusion and payments.
That's quite interesting there. Thank you very much, Mr. Ebuka. I particularly took note of the device financing there, because I think that's also something that a number of Nigerians will find interesting going forward. I'll come to you now, Dr. Kuka. I know the core theme of this webinar is beyond connect. Activity. But I know for context sake, a lot of our audience, Dr. Cook.
Yes, I can hear you. You keep breaking in and out.
To confirm, did you get my question, or should I go again?
Please, could you repeat it again? Because you broke
sorry
off
about that network. Yeah, the question is from an industry point of view, what does it mean to say beyond connectivity? Just to give context to some of our audience and viewers, what does the industry mean by, or what did the industry mean by beyond connectivity?
Okay, good day, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. We can look at beyond connectivity from a few perspectives. And Mrs. Oni-Egbuma has given some examples. Mr. Ezewuzie has given some examples with fintech, and some enablements there. Looking at, I recall once we've also talked about the contribution of telecoms, digital infrastructure to the economy, and it continues to grow. I sense it actually has grown beyond what is being seen, right? Statistics, if you look broader into other aspects of digital infrastructure and so on. A few years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, I was thinking we'd be around about 20% of GDP. By now, we've had some shocks, but that growth is still significant. But nevertheless, if you look at the impact beyond just looking at that, telecoms, and I look at broad digital infrastructure, because you can't have telecoms without data centers. You can't have the endpoint mobile communications of voice and data without the supporting infrastructure of towers and so on, and the supply chain that comes into that, cost of that supply chain. There are a lot of back-end things that make the endpoint work, right? Now, let's say we are trending towards 20% of contribution to GDP. I recall listening to the Director General for the Bureau of Statistics saying that although oil is about 7-8% of the economy, it actually impacts 60% of GDP, because of course it's a key earning of foreign exchange. Lots of reforms going on to broaden the foreign exchange base, which means you'll see that we should see that reducing in time, which is a good thing. Okay. Now come to mobile and digital infrastructure. I haven't seen the figures, and it would be interesting to see if we can get. But let's look at anecdotal evidence. And if I present this, I guess probably people will feel it's plausible. If you look at beyond just digital, and the contributions to GDP, a lot of these industries are actually supported by digital. The oil industry wouldn't function in terms of its exploratory capability, which is a key part of the industry, without connectivity. The dynamics of a lot of what happens in that industry would not happen that way. It's the same thing for a lot of other industries like finance. A bank is like a technology company that deals with finance basically these days. And fintechs have demonstrated that you can actually layer just on finance for 20 years now. I used to work at the first internet bank in Europe, at Egg Bank at the time, as digital services director, and we were a pure play bank. We broadened because as the whole technology piece evolved in time, it became clear that there's a good interplay between the underpinning technology and core banking and branches and everything. It gives you choice. People that are able to dance across channels. So you dance across channels of the PC that you use, the phone that you use, the tablet that you use, or the branch you go into, or the ATM that you use. These are all very diverse customer touch points enabled by the technology we're talking about, right? So you look at agriculture. There's a whole agricultural value chain. Actually, that was about 10 years ago now, transformed with the person who is now president of the Africa Development Bank in putting technology into agriculture to transform agriculture. You see, what happens then is you have traceability. You take out leakages across the process. You ensure that efficiencies happen, and the entire dispersing fertilizers, for instance, who gets what, where, who's received what, confirmations, that all of that stuff is through technology. Some of the issues now that we have with security affecting agriculture will be addressed through technology, and we'll see that play out. If you look at health, we saw on TV that the first robotic heart transplant happened in the last month or so with quite remarkable accuracy that the patient had half the time in ICU to get out. Health, education. You know, we have at points, endpoints that cannot be reached are reached by mobile telephony, okay, and broadband, right? And it means, therefore, that we can drive education to points where you don't need a physical school, but you need underlying power. And that comes into play in terms of that impact so many things. Power. Let's keep that. We're talking about telecommunications here. So what I say is, given that hypothesis, or reality actually, not hypothesis, I can draw that into anecdotal evidence that says, actually, technology affects at least 90% of what we do in our GDP, even though it's just 20% of GDP. So when you then add the layered aspects of what it will do to GDP, you start to add digital infrastructure as well. So the towercos and data center companies. If I give you one example, if you spend $10 million on data center infrastructure and carrier neutral data centers, which means all the carriers that can be there, it's not owned by any one carrier, okay? They're key to economies because all these things I'm talking about need to sit in that data center infrastructure somewhere and interconnect across all these telcos. That's the reality of how this stuff works right in the background, okay? If you put 10 million in, the direct or induced impact on economies can be 50 times. It's been proven at different parts across the world. Why? You build these things, say, for 10 million buys you, 10 to $15 million buys you, say, a megawatt, for instance. Now, it's not unusual to say we're now seeing sort of 5, 10, 100 megawatt data centers. Let's say a 10 megawatt data center, 100 million, 150 million. The impact to the economy is around about 50 times. It could be 10 to 50, depending to 100 times, because you build the infrastructure, you hire expensive architects to do that. You enable government systems because you've got to get planning permissions and, you know, the regulators, you know, all the different aspects of engaging people who are employed. You've got construction companies come in, you build it, you have M&E generators coming and electrical stuff, you start new industries, which is what's been happening within the Nigerian context. So given that, and then once you start to run it, you for every one person you hire, you need another 10 or so in the support chain. That's 100 million you've spent, let's say, actually brings around about 5 billion impact to the economy. And you start to drive this. That's when you start to think about the beyond telecoms, right? Because just the underpinning, and look at tower companies, their valuations and the employments that they bring in the economy. So if you look at beyond telecoms, you look at the supply side and the infrastructure side, the induced or direct impact to the economy is huge, as I've described. If you look at the front-end side and the supporting digital connectivity infrastructure, the support of the GDP is significant indeed. And it's a source of transformation. Now, just finally, if you look at certain dynamics, we talk about, you know, broadband penetration, meaningful broadband now, okay? General broadband penetration, we have around about, we've hovered around about 45, 46, when we go between 44 to 47. You know, we'll break I believe with actions being taken right now by the industry and government, we'll break through the 50% pretty quickly. But we're there or thereabouts. But if you look at meaningful broadband, it brings us back down to around about half of that, okay? But broadband is broadband. The International Telecommunications Union defines what it is. The term meaningful broadband is starting to now evolve out of that. But nevertheless, this brings around 2 to 2.5% growth in GDP when you get it. But it's not just getting broadband there. It's broadband adoption that's critical. And therefore, in driving adoption at the end point, you need to look at the kind of access you have. 2G, if you look at the analysis that's going on, 2G has come down significantly. 3G has peaked and flattening out. 4G gives meaningful broadband. and it's growing significantly, and we're now starting to see growth of 5G. That's good. So we get internet adoption. There's the 90,000 kilometers of fiber that's been discussed by the Minister for Communications and Digital Innovation and Digital Economy. That's on the way. It'll transform again. Okay. So that underpins the economy with going beyond just the mobile that we talk about to bring in transformation. And that's why I say we will probably impact about 90% of all of our economy by enabling mobile telecommunications actually at the front end and at the back end and digitally in infrastructure as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kuka, for that. I've taken a number of nuggets from what you just said. Technology will probably contribute about 90% of the Nigerian economy. And then
it's the
issues
point for what it's worth.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think that's something a lot of people will probably most likely agree with. We're moving to the second session of this webinar, and I'm going to come to you, Mrs. Inkem. We're going to talk about adapting in a high-cost environment by leveraging technology. One of the issues that Nigerians will probably talk about these days is high inflation, how it's affecting individual businesses and whatnot. So it's almost like a routine now for anyone to want to look at cost minimization strategy in order for them to survive, right? So as a player in the telecommunications industry, how are service providers now thinking about providing solutions beyond connectivity for a high cost environment? So now this is just beyond giving us good internet, good connectivity, but tailored services that helps Nigerians to be able to weather the high cost environment right now. How are they thinking about it, Mrs. Inkem?
Thank you again. I would say that really and truly, the telcos, they've been doing a lot in terms of, coming up with innovations on improving what we call cost minimization or optimization of, cost. So what is we are operating an environment where, that's quite challenging, high cost of diesel, high cost in power, powering the towers, the data centers, and the rest. But what the telcos have come to realize is that since the market is viable, there is need to, to be very creative and be innovative. So that led us to what we call bundling of the products that we sell. For example, with data, voice, and value-added service are now packaged as one product, and discounts could be given or incentives given to encourage consumers of those products to embrace it. That's one way. They've been very innovative, and on that, then secondly, they've been collaborating with other fintech and other agencies to make sure that the rural populace are reached in the best way possible. Because remember that these are fintech, these are telco companies. It's technology. The tools that they have is what people can leverage on to reach their audience, to market their products, to reach their loved ones, or to connect or to collaborate. That's what it is. And so often and again, you see them offering freebies as well, to make sure sometimes I get alerts between 12 the hours or 12 midnight to 5 a.m. You could browse the YouTube, you could do this and that. Those are incentives to help to reduce the spend for the consumer, because we realize that the disposable income for the users, the digital consumers has been reduced, given that costs, everything has gone up. But another area where the telcos are also trying to collaborate or to be very innovative in reducing their cost in a high cost environment is also looking at other sources of energy. Like instead of relying solely on diesel to power their towers or relying on PACN, sometimes you hear about the grid collapsing and the rest. So they are looking at into having, going into renewable energy, but that's going to be a long time solution. But these are initiatives that is on the border and the telcos are pursuing, such that in the long run, the cost of generating or powering a tower or a data center or a media gateway is minimized. And the lower the cost, of course, the lesser the cost for the products and services that they produce. So these are the ways that they are trying to be very creative, to helping people to consume their products. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mrs. Inkem. And then for our audience, in case you get a text message based on what Mrs. Inkem just said now, and then you are saying 5 gig, wherever you are, is a 5G environment, you can use free data from 5 to 9 p.m. Know that we're talking about these bundling products from the internet service providers. So thank you very much for that. I will come to you, Mr. Ebuka. And you see, the telco industry is such a unique environment, an interesting one where
I think we've lost some, so I just continue from there. So, Mr. Ebuka, can you
whereby
hear me?
you also as a
He's back. Go on, Samuel. Well, his internet is a bit bad, so maybe I'll just take on from here. Mr. Ebuka, can you hear me?
Very well, I can.
Okay, so when you look at the industry,
business you are dealing with.
Samuel, I think I'll just take up from here. A unique perspective where there are businesses that have to operate in high-cost environments, but yet have to deliver solutions to individuals and corporates facing similar headwinds, such as energy prices, foreign exchange challenges. How are telcos or telecoms service providers coping in the quest to remain profitable? Are there cost reduction methodologies which other businesses can learn from? Are the telcos creating more products that have lower costs for service providers to operate whilst maintaining margins and delivering quality for consumers? These are things that everybody wants to know and want to hear about.
All right, thank you. Thanks. So you see, honestly, it's a challenge. It's a big problem for telcos and for everybody. The cost of doing business has just really significantly increased in Nigeria, specifically due to the FX volatility. But then there are a couple of things that telcos are doing that I also want to share as well that many other businesses could also do. I also want to piggyback on what Mrs. Nkem said as well. So you see, in a telecom service, one of the key things that drives that service is the deployment of terrestrial networks. Deployment of towers across various areas and various geographical areas. It's pretty very expensive, right, to do those things, to deploy those infrastructure, to manage them and to maintain them, to power them, to keep people running them, to pay licenses for them. It's a humongous cost of money, right? Another thing also that is so very peculiar as well is building a large distribution network. Based on the number of subscribers you want to cover and acquire, you need to build a right distribution network to provide those services to those customers, right? Then also is a technology system that comes with all of this, because the telecommunication service requires very complex and advanced systems to run the service. And these systems must be very well sized to handle the massive volume of transactions that actually go through it. Then also the people and all that. So all these things require a whole lot of money to run, to maintain, and to provide. One of the key things that is being done, which Mr. Nkem has also mentioned as well, is that for the towers, a lot of advancement is going on right now in adopting renewable energy, because powering this equipment and this infrastructure with diesel and petrol and all that is massively expensive. So how are we able to utilize the free energy from the sun and the wind to power these equipments and reduce costs? This is one of the key areas right now that telcos are currently exploring and investing in, right? Another area as well too is also the aspect of the satellite coverage. So base stations and towers run on the concept of providing radio access networks, transmissions through physical deployment of infrastructure, which towers, right? Which basically means to cover a wide area, you need to deploy a whole lot of such infrastructure. So how can we actually provide the same coverage utilizing satellites in the low Earth orbit? That's also another advancement that is going on right now. I know for MTN, there's been some partnerships that have been started up already, that announced already, partnerships with Starlink and a host of other satellite providers to utilize that to complement the terrestrial network infrastructure that we have today. That's one of the key areas that telcos are actually investing in right now to basically help to reduce the cost of providing these services. Now, when it comes to distribution networks, you now have to start thinking about how many people are you going to put on ground, how many people are going to deploy in the most remote areas to be able to provide services, to be able to sell this airtime and provide services to customers. What has happened some years ago is the advancement of digital services. So many telcos are leveraging digital channels to distribute the services, right? To provide the services and distribute the products, and as well as utilizing digital channels as well to provide areas of contact for the customers to be able to get solutions to their challenges and problems. Beyond this, it is now also the localization initiatives. So the volatility of the US dollar and the FX rates, Naira to US dollar FX rates is a big problem for telcos and many businesses. No matter how much, what size, whether it's a big or a small business, it's a massive impact, right? So what telcos are doing now is basically looking inwards, right? As against having to source many of the technologies and many of the providers from foreign organizations and having to pay these things in US dollars, how can we actually source these things locally? Or at best, renegotiate existing contracts, right? From being an FX base to being a local currency base. That is one of the things. So this also involves a host of things. It involves basically exploring opportunities within Nigeria, service providers within Nigeria, right? Engaging with them, evaluating the competencies, and then utilizing the services that they provide to provide our own services to our own customers, thereby reducing the cost of providing these services. Another approach as well, which is also being done as well, is bulk negotiation of contracts. The truth is that it's not everything that you're going to be able to source locally, right? So there'll still be some core competencies, some core services, some products or technology platforms that we still have to source from our partners abroad. But then those contracts then need to be renegotiated. And in some of the ways of negotiating those contracts also involve things like bulk negotiations. Now, if you're going to buy a license and pay X amount in USD for 3 years, buy a license and you're going to renew that every 3 years or every 1 year, right? And you pay X amount. Now, if I'm going to pay this, if I'm going to buy it in bulk, that is, I can purchase 5 years license, then I need to get a very significant discount, right? And that's one of the bulk negotiation approaches that's going on right now. So instead of having to get into contracts, especially when you're very sure of the service provider and you're very sure of the quality of the service and you're very sure of your continued demand of that service from that particular service provider. Now, instead of having to negotiate a 1-year contract, then you can actually negotiate a 5-year contract as an example and acquire and basically utilize that to get very significant discounts. Now, what it does for us is 2 things. One, we're actually able to secure a lower cost in acquiring that service or that license. That is 1. 2, we are able to lock in the contract at a certain FX rate, which helps to mitigate against the incidence of FX fluctuation. So that's also another approach that's basically utilized as well. Also is also the aspect of automation, right? It can be overemphasized. There's a whole lot of capabilities, there's a whole lot of cost efficiencies, there's a whole lot of operational efficiencies that can actually be saved from automation. So what some people are doing, and we are doing at MTN as well, is utilizing robotic process automation. So what that basically means is that those aspects, those pieces of work that you require a huge number of people to do, right? How can we actually utilize robots to do those pieces of work, right? Or at the same time, how can we utilize robots to reduce the amount of time that is actually spent in executing those jobs? This has played out in various aspects. This has played out in our contact center. Telcos actually investing in utilizing bots and AI in providing conversational responses and engagement with customers in addressing customers' complaints and requests, right? That helps to reduce the cost of running those centers and a host of other things. Then lastly is the diversification of products. Now, in addition to providing core connectivity services, so telcos right now are diversifying into various other areas, right? Areas like fintech, like we've seen a lot of foray into the fintech area in Nigeria by telcos, utilizing the payment service bank license. But there are also other areas as well, like digital services, providing digital services directly to businesses, directly to consumers, right? Content, rich media services. You have platforms where you can actually go right now and you watch movies, you consume content like it's a Netflix service. These are digital services that telcos are now diversifying into, as well as fintech. Then also things like API monetization and data monetization. So for example, we have in MTN, we actually have a subsidiary called Chinosis, which is actually a business that is spun out of MTN, like the Momo PSB was spun out of MTN and a host of other businesses, basically spinning them out to focus on certain non-telco services. So Chinosis is basically focused on providing APIs for developers, for developer communities, and businesses to be able to build awesome applications utilizing some huge intelligence that and assets that exist within the telco, right? Which basically is all about monetizing our existing data assets. One other interesting service as well that is also being provided and offered right now is the aspect of a capability that enables businesses right now to still be able to deploy their compute workloads on Azure, but instead of paying in US dollar, you pay in Naira. So at MTN, there has been some partnership that's happened with Microsoft that enables that to happen. So these are various areas and various approaches that telcos are taking, that we have taken as MTN, right? And we are sharing as well that many other businesses also need to start considering and start taking to help to mitigate the significant impact of FX volatility in this modern business environments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ebuka. Great insight. So I'm on to you, Dr. Cooper. So you've heard from Mrs. Inkem, the freebies in the middle of the night, and a lot of young people are awake in the middle of the night. You've had the opportunities to create collaborations and synergies from Ebuka. So when you look at that, and given the prevailing high cost of the telecom environment, what consumption patterns are emerging? What happened after the COVID, data increase, VoIPs, SSD products, all hitting the market. And then also, analysts believe that prices are still going to continue in the medium term. Therefore, costs of living skyrocketing with petrol prices just going up over 900. What changing patterns are service providers anticipating and planning for? Because this become a critical issue in what you said earlier of 500 million being spent on a data center, generating 10 times in terms of economic growth.
Okay, yeah. The perspectives. You see, broadly, what we're seeing here with, let's say, cost of living crisis is what has crystallized of what could have a couple of years back. But some hard truths were not faced. So we're hitting them now. Inflation doesn't just uptick when you wake up in one morning. It's built up in time. It's a bit like gaining weight. You eat so much, you gain weight. And then once you've gained the weight, it's very difficult to lose the weight. So this weight gain we have has been because we've been eating stuff. I'm just using that analogy. Inflation is a key issue for us now. And if someone says you've got weight and it's going to be a problem for you in obesity, and you don't do something about it, you go off and the circumstances you face are actually worse, right? There's certain things you have to face the issue and take the medicine so that you get better and enjoy the benefits of your actions. That's what was, the Western world has been having inflation and cost of living crisis for the last 3 years. This has been around so much. And if you look at other areas that have weathered better than others, Europe, the US is a big issue in those places and is unfortunately also what we have to face, but we have to deal with it as best as we can. So fundamentally, we've got to reduce that cost of inflation. The input reasons for the cost of inflation are varied. We're not talking economics right now, but and I'm not an economist. Okay, I can just give a layman's perspective of where I see it and a businessman's perspective. So we have to fix that inflationary pressure. And also the cost of living is also coming through with some of the things we have to deal with. We can't, the subsidy issue is another thing that brings in another set of questions. Nevertheless, it all comes into a cost of living crisis we have to face. Now, bringing this back down to telco, the input costs are high given that inflation, the inflationary pressures that we see. And there are different things that cause the inflationary pressures. But you see, operators have not been able to modify prices, regulated prices at the other end. And there are reasons for that. It's going to be another impact on the cost of living crisis, could be other impacts on inflation. And we have to be sort of careful about this in the ecosystem of a whole range of things. And if you add the discussions of what is minimum wage and whatever else, there has to be a balance between the systemic impact and addressing key critical issues we have to address, right? So we have to be creative, I think, as Mr. Ebuka has mentioned, in terms of a whole range of things that we have to do, and this is in Ken as well, as value-added services that are targeted in a certain way to provide relief in certain areas. But we also have to realize that there are certain aspects of services that more affluent parts of society can afford, and they will buy and allow an element of graduation of products and services in a way that fits different aspects of society. So we have to be quite creative in terms of the way we address that. Because you see, if we don't have the capital investment, okay, your broadband will keep going down, just like the issues you're having right now, because that will cause systemic issues that we have unreliable broadband, which means all of the boost benefits of everything we're talking about will be dead. So we'll be dead anyway. So we need to think about the creative ways of addressing this issue in what is, in a broad way, fair in society. Some of these things have been being thought about around the price of energy for years and how you target that. The person who can afford to run 3 air conditioners is different from someone who just wants to have light plug to charge the phone and have the children reach to be able to go to school and build prosperity. Okay, I'm coming at this from a very, very broad, almost sort of broader philosophical, but very true, practical, in my view, viewpoint. Okay, now, if you actually look at the cost of access, mobile, right, and broadband, I won't go through it. Go online and check. Where does sub-Saharan Africa lie? Where does Nigeria lie in the world rankings? Even in Africa, you know, it actually isn't that high. It could be cheaper. Because it's not that high doesn't mean we shouldn't make it better, right? And it's fine if we're the best in the world. It's okay, okay? But the current fact is it's not, oh, it's high cost because you are telling me, cost. I'm saying, okay, yeah, there's input costs, there's the realities of how we need to face the market with some of the innovations that my colleagues on this panel have talked about. And now, the issue we have is affordability. How many hours do you have to work to earn to buy 1 megabyte of data or to buy X number of minutes of voice? Now, that isn't competitive. You know, it's a different situation for us. So affordability is the key issue as well. So that drives the thinking of saying, what products and services can we creatively offer that it's not one answer for everybody? Oh, it's cheap. Oh, it's expensive, right? The individuals here who go off to the US or the UK or Canada or wherever else, they'll pay X amount for their data or whatever that is significantly higher than here, but want to come to Nigeria and pay the price we pay in Nigeria, which is a lot less. No, we can graduate it for in some products and services to be targeted, like I said before, to those that can then bring in and afford it, which enables a systemic impact that enables us to get the investment that is good for all. So we need to think about it that way. So from what I've heard now from the industry players, it's good to see those creative aspects of products and services, free times at certain points in time. You know, there would be an individual who's free internet 6 o'clock till 10 p.m. for Facebook and whatever else, or education or e-health that they need to use those platforms for matter. Others, it doesn't matter. So you innovate around that. So I'd like to really put that as it has to be a broader, holistic approach that we take. And also, we, in a way, are having our share of the cost of living crisis that didn't just wake up in the last 6 months or whatever. It's been brewing. But it's also encouraging to see some of the analysis that is coming out and so on that says that actually manufacturing exports are going up, non-oil exports are going up and so on. So something is playing through. And it may well be from some of the analysis that's coming back that sort of 2025, 2026 region, we start to see that change coming through. I'm only mentioning that because of the context it gives us for the subject of this conversation. It therefore means that we can innovate to bring in more affordable services in a targeted way that is creative in the way we are now allowed pricing to allow the investments that we need in an efficient way, as Mr. Buka said, that allows the capital to go to the right place for us to drive the right products and services. You know, so for instance, if, you know, we have the example, if you're a telco, you're not building telco towers, you know, and so on. I build data centers, I can deliver capacity to the industry. That doesn't need capital to go in there. Those ones can go in. So we have to really creatively think about how we focus the products and services at the front end to the consumer and the customer. And at the back end, how we optimize the way we spend money on infrastructure and aggregate it across the industry to tackle this, you know, what I call sort of infrastructure supply side cost issues, and also the demand side cost of service issues and opportunities actually that we have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cook. So I hear from all these three speakers in this session: efficiency, some freebies, affordability, driving down inflation at the back end, diversification in terms of how products are created for the consumers. I'll hand back to Samuel now to take on the next session, session 3 and 4, which will be coming up towards rounding up the session. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Yoade. It has really been an interesting conversation. Time has really been fast spent, but it almost seems like we should not end, because it seems like a lot of conversation and a lot of things going around. But let's go to this third session, and there we're talking about future trends in technology and the Nigerian economy. And I'll start with you, Mr. Buka, this time. Yeah, we've spoken about how the telecommunications sector, the ICT sector, has grown significantly in the last past year, but it also seems like there's also much more innovations that is available for us now going forward, in such a way that some of this technology can act as catalyst for other sectors of the economy. I know we mentioned about how technology can help fintechs, for example, agriculture, education, health. And for you to state, how are the rollout of 5G, for example, transforming industries now beyond telecommunications, other industries like fintech, health tech, and education? And then beyond that, we have also seen a number of exciting technologies like AI, the blockchain technology, data science, local technology. How excited are you about some of these technologies, and how do you think they can help transform the Nigerian economy as a whole?
All right, thanks, Samuel. So first of all, is that the rollout of 5G has really been very significant, 4G and then 5G, in transforming various sectors like fintech. For example, every single payment that happens today runs on a broadband connectivity, right? It's enabled by that, all digital electronic payments. And we've seen a lot of people creating new products, launching new services, basically on top of this infrastructure. And basically that's really enabling the economy. We've also seen a lot of youths and a lot of people actually selling on social media, right? All that is made possible due to the data connectivity that actually exists, that is made possible, right? And that's really how some industries are being transformed now. This is not even an industry now. This is basically individuals selling. Now, when it comes to industry, various sectors in Nigeria are really being positively impacted. In healthcare, over 5G connectivity, we've seen very significant innovations that are going on right now. Really very significant innovations that are really going on right now. We've seen a lot of players that have come in, that have spoken with us, and basically going into various areas. Like, to be honest, it's really not about the hype anymore. It's about really what's going on. So we've seen people really deploying technologies around remote surgery. We've seen that happen. We've seen people deploying technologies on top of 5G that aids things in healthcare, that aid things like remote care. So patients today are able to get served, not just by speaking to somebody over a video conferencing, a doctor, but also by transmitting their vital readings through devices over a high-speed data connection. So those blood pressures, the oxygen level of the patient, whatever it is, those vital readings are being transmitted from the person's body over a digital connection to a command and control center over 5G that enables doctors to be able to monitor those readings and be able to deploy interventions for those health. We've seen advancements in wearables and health monitoring. You see the Fitbits that we're all wearing today, and some of them really, and even the mobile phones that we are holding today are actually becoming terminals that helps us to monitor our health and transmits all this data to healthcare providers with our permission over 5G connection. That helps to monitor. That's really transforming the healthcare industry. Now, in the education sector, we've seen significant advancements in remote learning. So when it comes to things like virtual reality, we've seen situations whereby industries today, factories today, high-tech industries are now deploying virtual reality headgears to their staff, utilizing that in training them in various areas in running equipment. So people that have to do with certain complex equipments, instead of having to take those staff to those equipments to actually train them with those equipments, those staff can actually be trained at their various locations using virtual reality. So they are able to interact with the equipment, they are able to do the work they need to do on those equipments, they are able to be trained on the various parts and operations of those equipments without physically touching those equipments, but it actually feels very real to them. Those are significant improvements. Then we've also seen growth in virtual classrooms for students, right? The rise of COVID also made that very possible, and the adoption is really growing right now. We've seen situations whereby teachers today can earn money, not just by working for a school, but by being part of a teacher network in a certain app. That is really transforming the economy around those areas. In agriculture, we've also seen investments. We've seen innovations in the area of remote monitoring of crops. We've had engagement with certain organizations that today are actually working towards utilizing the satellite data and utilizing 5G connections to be able to monitor how crops are performing across various geographical areas, and use that as insight to farmers in advising them how to improve their farming practices. We've also seen the use of drones as well to be able to perform things like deploying pesticides and all that. All these things are being enabled by advancements in technology all over the 5G connection and other various high-speed data connection. So these are just a few examples, but there are so many of them that are going on right now, all enabled by the advancement by the rollout of 5G networks. Now, there are also other technologies as well that are also very notable, like you mentioned, the AI, data science, low-code technology. They all come together. They all come together to provide these super capabilities for people. Now, when I see AI, I look at AI as basically a technology that enables productivity. It's all about productivity. And when people's productivity are improved significantly, they also start to experience economic improvements as well and economic development in their lives. Now, just look at a situation whereby with the advancements of AI, especially the generative AI aspect, one of the things I tell people as well about generative AI is that it ushers in the era of the creative generalist. What it basically means that whoever you are, you mustn't have that deep vertical technical skills in certain areas to be able to be productive to a certain level in those areas. What it means that even you, as you wake up and you want to start up a business, right? You can actually start up a business utilizing generative AI to do things like understanding how your marketing is going to be done, understanding the sort of contracts you're going to have, understanding the sort of business plans, helping you to develop those business plans, right? Helping you to actually engage in those marketing. So these are basic capabilities that are actually enabling people today and enabling businesses. And the impact of this is massive. AI is no longer going to be a point of differentiation for anybody or for any business. It's going to be an expectation because every business is going to utilize AI in one way or the other and improving their productivity. So these are the future trends in the Nigerian economy, and these things are really portend very significant positive outlook for Nigeria. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting, Mr. Ebuka, and I really liked some of the very basic relatable examples that you rolled out there where some of these technologies can be used. I want to come to you, Mrs. Inkem, and I know Mr. Ebuka has given us some context around areas where technologies are adopted, but this question particularly, I'm happy because you are a finance person. And there's always a conversation around financial inclusion in Nigeria. So right now, financial inclusion is way below 70%. And there's always the conversations of how telcos or internet or technology can help to drive financial inclusion. So if you can just be as brief as possible, what role do you think emerging technologies such as Internet of Things, AI, just as Mr. Ebuka said, can play in enhancing telco services, and how can these help to drive financial inclusion in Nigeria?
Okay. Thank you for that question. I would say that as it is, some aspect of some section of the banks, like the financial industry, they're already engaging or deploying the tools of IoT and AI in, and choosing customers or enhancing customer experience. Just to mention a few banks, they've actually there's a robot called Leo, or a virtually assisted tool device in some banks that can help to serve the customer. Just you give the command and the customer. So people the day it was even launched, surprisingly, in one of those banks, the number of people that opened the account increased. I was amazed. Why? Because people want to see, oh, it means it could be served by a robot or it could be served by a computer. No human I don't have to call my account officer, So those are the ways that, people are curious, people are, their search for knowledge is insatiable. So they want to, that's one way. With the deployment of these AI tools and the IoT emerging technology by the financial sector is helping already, with those, even in Lagos State, I'm told in the transportation department sector, they have deployed an AI tool that helps to monitor traffic. So it could advise road users, okay, you avoid this route, you avoid this route, you go on this route. So people will necessarily want to embrace or, subscribe to that kind of tool because they want to know, they don't want to waste their time, spending so much time, their fuel, the cost of fuel has gone up in a traffic if they can avoid it. So you could see how the tools is helping to, bring in more digital enthusiasts, into coming into the wider digital space. So those are the few areas, the ones I know. But most importantly, I think the AI tool can help to process a lot of data in terms of giving the right information, and either in terms of credit analysis, risk, and all what have you, such that one can target, you can now know the target audience. You can, with information at your disposal, you can target the right audience. So it's a tool that any sector of the economy can embrace, and they will grow, they will strive. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Keman, and rightly said that technology can actually play a huge role in the financial services sector. And I think if from the financial service sector side of things, we can improve the level of confidence that we have in infrastructure, we could also boost the confidence of Nigerians in the banking or other financial services, and such that a lot more Nigerians can be more onboarded in this sector. I want to come to you, Mr. Coker, for this, and I know we've spent quite an amount of time on this conversation as to how the telecommunications sector can be a catalyst for driving some of these growth. But I also emphasize that there are some challenges or some roadblocks that is hindering the telecommunications sector or technology as it were from having such a cross-functional significant growth across other industries. What are those challenges? And then while stating that, can also help us with possible solutions around this, Dr. Coker.
I mentioned some of this earlier. I see those challenges as opportunities. And sometimes where the opportunities that I'm taking, it might be a matter of education. So that is where we need to make sure that the potential of technology to transform industries is understood. And the incentives, okay, there's no better incentives than great business outcomes. And to get great business outcomes, you need to be efficient, you need to deliver products and services that consumers want. And that's why I said technology must be affecting at least 90% of our economy right now through different industries. But we still have the challenges that we need to overcome, getting the right investment into the underlying infrastructure, making sure we localize more as we can in the value chain to make the cost more efficient, and turn that around, actually, that we're able to also export more of our technology services, not just constrained into the industries that we have here, but as an industry as well. It's a great foreign exchange income earner. And that's when you start to see the whole thing building into global technology value chain, streamlining what we do through the other industries trying to export, traceability, data protection, a whole range of these things. I see them more as the opportunities to innovate. Like I've been in technology back around, I would say, Africa and country Nigeria. And there's no more opportunity to innovate than I've found anywhere that's more interesting than in Africa. Those challenges can hit you and feel like they're going to knock you down sometimes. But if you actually put it in perspective, you think, okay, what are we going to do to get over these challenges? And that's just the next problem to solve. So I can list problems, execution of infrastructure, the skill sets and the value chains, access to the right level of capital, issues with having to have resized, reassessed, and restructured the way the economy works and the value of the naira. In my view, we need to turn that into a right positive in terms of getting the right level of investment. Some almost like a critical operation that needed to happen, and put those challenges that we have in perspective. But we also have to educate as technologists, as an industry in telecoms and digital infrastructure, all of the businesses in terms of how they can leverage technology efficiently. So I say to some CEOs, why would you build a data center where you can outsource it? Oh, well, my IT person said, well, the education is why actually you don't. Put your capital where it's working for the front end of your business. Oh, I didn't realize that. Well, now you know. There's a data center there you can go collocate in. It gives you flexibility, it gives you scalability, it gives you agility. You can connect to all technos and focus on your business. Oh, right. Thank you very much. And it's the same thing, that say Mr. Ken was talking about with the products and services and what we can actually deliver to businesses to say, okay, this is how you use and enable this technology to transform. What does AI mean to you? AI, we can talk about. AI is actually going to transform our lives. If technology was going to lay people off, we would not be doing anything. But what technology has done over the years is make our lives better. It's improved quality of life. It's opened up new industries. It's enabled more efficiency to allow more effective use of money and brought more leisure into our lives. And I think AI is just going to take that up to another level with the choices we make. But as technologists, there's a lot of learning we need to do. There's a lot of putting those challenges in perspective. And there's a lot of education we need to do to drive that adoption across different industries.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Kuka. I particularly find the education part interesting. I think education across the entire value chain industries would also help them understand how these technologies can help them in their various the business environment and the challenges that they face. But I'll still stay with you here because we're now very well in the last session of this webinar. And whenever we look at some of these fundamentals across industries, we always
I think we have a hitch with someone.
want to look at the opportunities ahead because we want to look forward. And here we want to look at.
I think I'll just
turn off your video.
I think I'll just take it. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's present too.
Yes.
Yeah, I just take it on from here. So I'm staying with you, Mr. Kuka. This is my presentation. What I said, the blue skies are there, despite the fact weeds and tons. So what is vision for digital Nigeria, and how do you see the telecoms industry evolving to align with the vision? You spoke about 2025 just now and 2026. These are critical years in the telecoms industries when you consider this administration.
Is that what vision do I have for digital Nigeria?
Yes.
Okay. Now I have to try and shorten this because we're out of time. Really, in Nigeria, that's not just we have affordable access universally, okay, in a very, very targeted way with the digital infrastructure. around with the broadband adoption and with the right access points at the right price. There's a lot we need to do to innovate to enable a lot of that to happen. And a vision where we're driving efficient, effective agriculture, right? Efficient use to drive GDP up, a key part of the trillion-dollar economy that we could be, and why not, right? You know, and a key export capability for the country. I see Nigeria being the digital infrastructure hub in Africa for the cloud services with broad data center capability. We have undersea connectivity we've got a Quena cable that has come in. It's been live for about over a year now. We've got the 2Africa coming in, going live, huge connectivity coming into the country, but interconnected by fiber, tenfold at least, right? Across the country, all right, to drive the consumption right into the country. But we're not just doing that for digital infrastructure into the country. We're almost also the digital infrastructure hub that allows us to serve cloud AI demand much more broadly across the continent. And what the sort of critical infrastructure hub I say sometimes that, not sometimes, I see a trajectory where, for instance, Lagos will be a digital hub of connectivity and data centers that rivals Joburg, for instance, has a great geophysical location. The local consumptive capacity is incredibly high, right? And it has significant subsea cable connectivity coming in. But we've got to make that happen with, you know, delivering that infrastructure actually efficiently at the right cost.
Thank you, Dr. Kuka. Let me come to you, Mrs. Nkem, and I hope you can hear me well. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for telcos to expand their role in financial services, particularly in underserved and rural communities?
If I heard you right, you're talking about where do we have the biggest opportunity?
Yes.
Right? Was that the question?
Yeah, to serve, particularly in the financial services, particularly in underserved and rural communities.
Good. I think for me, where I see our greatest opportunity is still in the area of the mobile money services. Why? Because in my earlier speech, I had said that we have 26% of the Nigerian population is still underserved and unbanked. So it's important that we aim at let's have a more comprehensive coverage, you know, to enjoy I see a very huge opportunity there for the telecom space to play in. Like the success story in Kenya where M-Pesa, you know, is a huge success. That's a mobile money product that 1 in every 3 Kenyans, you know, uses mobile money. So I see great opportunity in mobile money service. We are doing well in it, but we can improve. Then the second place where I see a huge opportunity also is also one of the telecom tools that we use is called the USSD, which is a structured supplementary data service data, sorry, on unstructured supplementary service data, the USSD. This is a tool that is used by, in the rural areas, those who cannot afford the internet or the smartphones, and is very cost effective. So how did the success story happen in Kenya? It's because they use a native language, they use Swahili, but here in Nigeria, if you're using the command, for instance, to tell you you want to transfer, press *123, for instance, #, and that is English. English is not our first language. So what we want the telcos is a huge opportunity to tap into that space to grow the financial inclusion in the rural area. We need to see if we can translate this English command into any of the 3 major languages we speak in this country, so that the rural people, they understand. They don't need an interpreter to say, Mama, you did this or do that to get your money transferred or to receive money, or do you understand? Or to check your accounts or whatever. So I think it's important that that's a huge opportunity. We already have the products. Then the third area we need to also look at is the payment service banks for the telco industry. They already have the payment service bank, whether there are some regulatory hurdles. They need to look into those hurdles such that sectors like what they call it, the pension, insurance, even granting of micro loans to the people in rural areas to help them, they could really delve into this. But as we speak, they cannot. So those are the areas I feel that I see huge opportunity. If we can tackle this, if we can address it head on, there'll be, it will foster economic growth overall. It's not just to connect people, let there be economic empowerment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Nkem. You're talking more, you've spoken so much about financial literacy, and financial literacy for us at Nairametrics is a huge part. It's not just in English, but in every language that every Nigerian can understand so that they can be financially literate. And Ebuka, the final question comes to you. How sustainable are telco-led financial inclusion initiatives in the long term? And what strategies can ensure deeper market penetration and continued success?
All right, thanks, Yoade. So quite a couple of strategies can enable that deeper market penetration and continued success. One of them is basically utilizing digital channels, right, to deploy these services to the customers directly and make it available and easily accessible to the consumers to access these financial services, right? And that also includes as well utilizing data services deployed over internet connections and the ones deployed over non-internet connections. One of the things that telcos do as well is to even enable people to access these financial services on digital services, even without internet connection, without the mobile data. That's really huge, right? That would help deeper market penetration. So we've seen that play out a lot. At MTN is being done. Some other telcos are also doing that. What it basically means that the financial services app today that are being rolled out by these telcos can actually be accessed by users, even when they don't have data, internet connection. That helps to deepen the market penetration for these services. Also is the agent networks and localized services. By expanding agent networks to rural areas, to various underserved areas, and making these services available to users, utilizing communities, people that are actually very, very conversant with those rural areas that can speak the language, utilizing them to actually deliver these services to them and helping people to get onboarded and get financially included, as well as using tailored financial products. So we basically need to understand what the needs of people in various areas are, what the needs of people in various market segments are, and provide financial services that specifically addresses their needs, right? Things like lending, things like savings. There's this aspect of financial services that people actually do a whole lot, right? But in an informal way, which is agile, right? How can we actually improve that? Provide services that improves that whole process of our job, right? For them, that's a tailored financial service, right? To a certain segment that needs that. That's very, very key. Then also, Mr. Kim also talked about digital literacy, and Dr. Cook also talked a lot about cooperation. So one of the key things as well is various financial service providers and telcos need to start to co-create more and better, right? That has started to happen, but a whole lot of more of that is required. Using shared infrastructure to deliver these services to consumers cheaper, that will help to increase the market penetration and reduce, and also improve continued success. Now, digital literacy is also very, very, very key, right? We have to continuously engage with the users, educating them about the need to become financially included through SMS notifications, through community outreaches, through messages, through video and radio communications. That is also very key in enabling that. And then lastly is then using data-driven insights. So with all these strategies have to be deployed in the right way, at the right form, and to the right set of people, and at the right time, enabled by data-driven insights. So telcos actually sit on a very large, vast amount of data, right? And that data can actually be utilized in really understanding the significant areas and needs that people have in specific areas, and deploy those financial services in the right form and in the right context to those people. So these are approaches that really will significantly help to continuously deepen the market penetration and continued success for financial services by telcos.
Thank you very much, Ebuka, for all those insights. We're like 70 minutes past our time, and we would like to close down now. Thank you, Dr. Coker, for answering those questions in the Q&A. There's one, I think, Ebuka, if you could quickly look at that, you could quickly give us some insights into that, so that I think we'll get some.
All right. Okay.
Good answers. A few takeaways, and I'll start with Dr. Coker. You can't have telecoms without data centers. And I tend to agree with you, because it's not just about the people who are in those data centers. It's about the infrastructure you build. It's about the connectivity that you create in terms of different sectors of the economy, and moving on. There's room for growth in telecom space, because over 26% of the population is still underserved. And that's what Mrs. Nkem spoke to. The USSD, mentioning PESA, 1 in 3 Kenyans have access to one form of data usage or the other. And lastly, like I said, I didn't pick it in any particular order. What Ebuka said, every payment transaction in the country runs on telecom infrastructure. So now we know how huge that is, because if the telecoms industry is not growing at the rate at which we expect it to grow, in terms of meaningful broadband, like Dr. Coker spoke about, in terms of ability of customers to access the usage of the various kind of products that are available, in terms of financial inclusion, as stated by Mrs. Nkem, and we're a fight cry for me. It's really important that everyone listens to this at the end of the day and go back, if you had not joined us, to join us. Remember to join Nairametrics on all our platforms. Also remember to join us on some of our major shows on radio and on TV. Every Monday on Classic 97.3, 8 a.m. to 8:30, join Ugodre on Follow the Money. Every Wednesday, join our team of analysts who speak to everyday money matters on Lagos Talks 97.3. And every day on News Central at 4 p.m., where we look at the economy and the markets as a whole on Market Pulse, every evening at 4 p.m. on News Central. It's been a pleasure standing in for Samuel. Thank you very much, Samuel, for your wonderful anchor of this session. Thank you, every member of our panelists. It was a pleasure listening to you, and it's a pleasure meeting you virtually. I hope to meet all of you one day physically, so that we can have more discussions on this. Thank you very much. It's been Industry Outlook on telecoms industry for Nairametrics. Have a great afternoon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Bye.